Welcome to another exciting episode of Leading Our Adventures, your venturing podcast. Welcome and thank you for joining for our 21st episode. I'm your host, Hannah Todd, currently your podcast host. And we have a special guest who plays a critical role in shaping the future leaders of our venturing program. We're going to dive down deep into the world of venturing and leadership. We talk a lot about leadership, but did you know that there's a whole new world of possibilities? Presenting Aidan Wells. Aidan, welcome to this episode. Would you like to introduce yourself? Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Aidan Wells. I am a junior at Christopher Newport University, which is a small liberal arts school in southeastern Virginia. That means I'm in Colonial Virginia Council. I've been in venturing for several years. I guess scouting as a whole for like going on 15 years at this point. And I'm super, super excited to be here.
Wow, that's awesome. Just the tenure you've been in scouting. Aidan knows what he's talking about. Let's jump into leadership because that's what you wanted to come on about.
Let's do it.
You talked about how you're studying that in school, and let's start out with could possibly be an easy question. Could you share a defining moment that shaped your leadership style specifically?
A defining moment that shaped my leadership style. It's a great question. I'm not sure if there's like one specific defining moment, but I think it would be like, I don't know, I could give you a broad answer. I could say it's like the amalgamation of all my experiences, things that have helped to shape my leadership style. I guess I would say like, I don't know. I think it's tied to my vision as a person and the fact that I want to, above all, help fix the lives or help fix the leaks in the lives of others around me. And I think that choosing to lead with love above all else has really helped to guide all of my decisions in all of my leadership roles.
I love it. I love it. Aidan, we're diving really, really deep for the first question. Let's piggyback off of that. And I was wondering what inspired you to take on leadership roles in your life or in your career or like in school or scouts. How does that 15 years you've been in a lot of leadership positions. What inspired you?
I think this sort of ties back to my answer to the first question, but it's just like my desire to just try to put good back into the world. I always tell people that I'm close with that I never run for a leadership position because it's a position of leadership and I want to be seen doing that, but only if I feel like I really have the opportunity to make a true difference in that role. And so there's been some things that people tried to suggest that I should go down paths I should take, roles I should fulfill, that I just felt like were better filled by other people, or that my particular skill set did not lean itself to that role or that path or whatever. I feel like I have the responsibility to make the world a better place, and I'm trying to do that to the best of my ability in the ways that I can.
I love it. I love it. And we talk a lot about in the ALPS model that leadership is something we grow and change with. Talking about growing and changing, how do you navigate challenges that have tested the leadership positions that from your answer before you feel confident in that you can do a good job, but of course challenges are going to happen?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is just determination and persistence. There is this sort of, I want to say like idea or principle, but I've noticed in my experience, there's a lot of leaders that try to bite off more than they can chew. And I don't mean that necessarily in practicality. I mean in ideology. And I'm going to break that down really quickly. Basically, what I'm saying is that someone should really try to figure out what principles or values guide their decisions in life and then try to live by those. I think that if you just pick a few principles and try not to put all of your eggs in one basket and try to live consistently by those principles, then you're going to go far. It's all about persistence and trying to find something that you're so passionate about that the obstacles are so small in comparison to the vision, you know? I don't know. I think that in scouting, we have the scout oath and scout law that really, really help to guide us. And that's a really good set of values and principles that we should all aspire to. But when you're talking about being effective, depending on the scale in which you're a leader, you really need to pick like some things, whether it's fulfillment, health, service, whatever it is, that guide all your choices and be pursued. Not pursued, but pursue those, I guess.
I love that. I love that. Is there anything else? Did I cut you off?
No, I mean, like, whenever I encounter problems, I think that the first thing I think is I stop and say, what is the most helpful, loving, and supportive way that I can respond in this exact moment? And it's funny because someone taught me comparatively recently, this acronym that I think is so, it pops up in my head constantly. It's one of those acronyms that you'll never forget. It's WAIT, WAIT, which stands for Why Am I Talking? It helps every single time I am in a position where I either want to take control of that situation because you feel like you could do it better, or someone says something that just inflames a part of you and you want to respond immediately, and sometimes that can become aggressive. So it's all about sort of taking a step back and putting not disregarding your opinions, but putting your perspective on the back burner and listening to what other people have to say first.
I like that perspective. I haven't heard of the WAIT acronym before we started talking. That's really cool. WAIT. I wonder how I can implement that, and our listeners how they can implement that in their everyday lives. In talking about, so when you're talking about why am I talking, and then when you're diving into cultivating trust and motivation as a team, because no matter how big your team is, leadership is helping guide people to a common goal or common direction potentially. How would you boost your culture in your team?
Wow. Okay, so this is a really, really important question because I think that culture is probably the most important thing to consider in leadership for helping a team really come forward and accomplish their vision. There's so many parts to culture. Culture is the vision. Culture is like mantra, like the totems and stuff you use. On a surface level, you can look at organizations like the Order of the Arrow, and you can look at a lodge's given totem and say, oh, this is a rallying cry behind which the entire lodge operates and pushes people through. Some lodges, more effective than others. In my home lodge, their totem is a duck. And so it's one of those things where people see ducks in public and they're sharing pictures. People take rubber ducks and spread them everywhere, that sort of thing. And that's absolutely a part of culture. But I think that the culture that you foster as a leader is way more personal than that. And it's the difference between a leader and a manager by definition.
Oh, say more.
Yeah, so leaders, I guess when you're coming down to like a more scholarly approach to leadership, there's a big difference between leaders and managers. leaders are the type of people that set the vision and inspire people to want to accomplish that vision on their own. And I think there's something that we don't consider often enough when we talk about vision. And it's that the vision should help each member of that team grow. But for that vision to be effective, each member of the team has to clearly see themselves in that vision. There has to be something, not necessarily that they're getting out of it, because fulfillment is something you're getting out of it, but it's all about walking the walk. It's all about like your relationship with the team and the team's relationship with the vision. When it comes to managers are people that kind of like set deadlines, and they don't really affect that inspirational, transformational change within the members of the team. People who are led by a manager usually are just kind of doing it because it's their obligation. It's like their job to do the thing. But a leader is someone who really, really is so motivating, so inspired, so captivated by the vision that everyone else around them therefore wants to be a part of that on a personal level. And that can be used both good and bad, as we've seen all throughout history. But I think that culture is probably the biggest thing. Leaders mentor, guide, set ethical and moral boundaries and that sort of thing.
I see. And you've built a lot of different leadership teams together. I remember talking to you about restarting your council VOA. And when you were doing that, what qualities would you look for when building a leadership team?
I look for clever people. And I say that because a mentor of mine recently said that they look for clever people. And I thought that was a really, really good word to use. What I mean by clever people is people who like are good critical thinkers, can think on their feet, that sort of thing, but also people who think differently from me. And I don't mean that I go out of my way to hire only people that are different from me, but like, I think that having other people's perspectives pulled into the team is so critical. And that, I don't know, I think we can segue into that later. But for me, it's about initiative and ambition. I feel like a lot of people are so focused on keeping their job that they forget to actually do their job. You know, after all, what's the point in having small ideas?
No, that is very insightful. Having diversity on your team, having a team that thinks of big ideas and wants to do their role, not just be their role.
Exactly.
When you're coaching your team, how do you stay adaptable in an ever-changing world that is constantly throwing new challenges, new things to do, new ideas?
So that comes down to how I view perspective and worldview somewhat conceptually. So hang with me for a second because I'm going to break it down. But the way that I see it, any perspective or opinion or worldview or whatever on any matter in the whole universe can be rationalized by someone's experiences. So that means that all the opinions and things that I have that I accept as fact about the world are just the result of the experiences I've had in my life. And other people have all had different experiences which lead them to rationalize different viewpoints and think differently than I do. And that is so incredibly essential to team building and staying adaptable. Because when you're constantly being willing to take in feedback and listen, especially the feedback of people whose perspectives and experiences could not be any different from yours, you'll be constantly able to adapt. And when I talk about adapting, I don't just mean adapting and changing for the sake of changing, but like there's a line, and I think that it's really, really important as a team to identify when you cross that and when you haven't.
Like it. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Can you talk about a time that you used those adaptability skills with you and your crew where you had to lead through uncertainty?
Yeah, I think whenever someone asks for a specific example on something, I always feel like, and you probably feel this too, that you have to come up with like the best, most specific example. And then I usually wind up not coming up with any examples. But when it comes to uncertainty in leadership as a whole, I think that there are good things and bad things. When it comes to uncertainty, you really have to, as a team, try to define your roles, what role everybody plays in the team. And you come together and you think, what is the actual problem that we're facing? And it's not just what is our vision, it's like, what is the immediate obstacle that's right before us that we need to tackle? And what part does each person in that team play in tackling that? The good thing about uncertainty, or I'm hesitant to say chaos, but I'll use that word because I think that it works within the idea. The good thing about chaos is that it gives you the opportunity to bring order from chaos, and it lets you start from go and create a new vision and chart the course for what that organization, team, whatever project is going to be from that moment on.
I like it. Okay, cool. And you just talked about how you don't like to think of specific examples, which makes my next question that I had when I was compiling questions for you a little goofy. But I wonder how you're going to take it. Who are the leaders that inspire you and why?
So if you ask one of my current professors that same question, I can tell you exactly what his answers would be, because I think he reminds us every single class period that the leaders he looks up to are people like Martin Luther King, Mother Teresa, that sort of thing. For me, it may sound cliche, but I think the people I look up to every single day are, I mean, really everyone, but I think my peers a lot. And I think that's because of like the relationship between leaders and followers. And I don't think we talk about that enough. There's this idea that leadership is like a hierarchical thing where you have leaders, maybe managers, leadership adjacent, maybe it's under, depending on where you fall under that. And then you have followers under leaders. And I feel like that's not effective. In my experience, what constitutes a leader changes depending on how you choose to define it. Some people, if you ask like Machiavelli when he wrote The Prince, he's going to say that it's like a government position and that like leadership is political power. And some people still ascribe to that. Some people would just say that like leaders are those selected by their peers to have a say over their peers when they're working in a team towards a vision, that sort of thing. But I feel like leaders are more among their peers. There's a symbiotic relationship to me inherently between leaders and followers that I feel like we don't talk about enough. Leaders will change. The person who acts as a leader changes. And I don't just mean leadership in the traditional sense, like I just explained, but leaders really kind of like lead by example. And we hear people say that all the time, but I think there's some truth to that. I think that someone can be a leader even when they're not in a leadership position. Someone can be a leader even when they're not saying a single word. Sometimes the leader is just the person in the group that everyone else in the group looks at and says, well, they're doing a really good job. They're really going out of their way. And by proxy, that sets the example. And so then I feel like leaders are just kind of like the people in the team who rise, it sort of ebbs and flows. You know what I'm saying? That like they rise to the occasion, and sometimes when it's not your occasion, someone else rises to the occasion. And so I think the answer to your question, who are leaders that inspire you and why, are my peers who constantly keep me humble, keep me in check, but also who constantly teach me by proxy.
Cool. Awesome. And with that, if leaders are everybody around you, how do you empower others to step into, you might put them in quotes, leadership roles?
So this question makes me think of another question that people ask me all the time. And it's like, I'm not sure if it's a specific question, but there's an idea that comes with this question. And it's like, how do you know when you've made an impact on people? And it's that sometimes you don't. A lot of times, at least for me, I don't know that I've made an impact on people unless they tell me that I did. And when you go back and you think about it, how many people have had a profound impact on your life that you've never really thanked or acknowledged of? You know? It's always interesting when someone comes to me and they say, you know, you don't know me, or maybe I do know them, but there was this thing that happened that you may not remember that has always stuck with me. And I want to let you know how much that changed me. That is always super, super grounding. And I'm sure you can probably relate, but empowering others to step into leadership roles, I'm not quite sure how I do it, but I feel like it has something to relate to the vision for myself that I shared at the beginning of the podcast episode, where I said that I always try to help fix the leaks in the lives of others around me. And I think that there's something to that. I feel like people see that, maybe. I'm not sure, because I do it accidentally all the time. But also, I mean, I guess if the question is how you empower people into leadership roles intentionally, I think it's a lot of, as a leader, you're going to encounter roadblocks, setbacks. There are inherent risks that come with being a leader. And I think that when something doesn't go well as a leader, as a servant leader, you take the heat for it. And when something goes well, you should be the first one to give that credit away to other people. And I really hope that by doing that, I inspire other people to want to do the same thing for others.
Wow. Aidan, I'm getting chills. I have goosebumps now. Wow, very, very insightful. Very much something to chew on, and something for me to think about. I'll be going to sleep thinking about Aidan's wisdom. So thank you for that.
Think about stay hydrated.
I'm sorry?
Think about drinking water, stay hydrated.
I should do that. I should drink lots of water. This has nothing to do with drinking water, but it does. We will need water in the future. And as I think about the future, I wanted to ask you how leaders today can better prepare for tomorrow's challenges. yes, tomorrow we will all be drinking water, but other challenges besides that.
Ooh. How to prepare for tomorrow's challenges. This is similar to like where I see the future. And I think that if I could give advice to people who are aspiring to be effective, visionary, transformational leaders, there's a few things I would say. One, I would say don't pick a fight with your boss. Unless it's like immoral or unethical or something like that. There's a lot of people that I know, and I actually had a conversation with someone about this recently, that when they have a leader that they don't like, or someone in their team they don't like, they just kind of like wait for the term to end. Or if they feel like that person is not doing anything, they try to get them removed and replace them with someone else. And well, I feel like that may be appropriate after you cross a certain line, if maybe that person's actively burning bridges or making it more difficult for the team to do their thing. You have to recognize that in order for the team to move forward, everybody has to be pulling the sled in the same direction. And I would encourage you, when you're in those situations, to remember that you need those experiences that are different from you in order to help create a vision and a team that's working towards something for the betterment of the most people. I think I would also say to read everything you can. That doesn't mean literally read everything or watch everything or whatever, but I think what I mean by that is to just sort of absorb strategies and techniques and things that other people implement, like the viewers of this podcast watching this episode and absorbing that sort of thing. Don't plagiarize people's ideas, but be willing to adapt other people's ideas. Sometimes I have found the most success by not reinventing the wheel and instead choosing to actually go back to old policies and structures and things that we had decades ago that were super successful at the time, and seeing how we can adapt those for the modern day instead of trying to come up with a whole new idea. Because sometimes the solution to your problem has already been found and you just need to go find it. I already said this, but I think it is still relevant here that as a leader, it's your responsibility to try to make the world a better place in whatever way you can do that. And when something goes wrong in a team, a part of that servitude of being a leader is to take the heat. Maybe that's the wrong way to say it, but like when something goes wrong in trying to accomplish the vision, trying to reach one of your goals, you sort of assume that responsibility and you reward people who are going so far out of their way, infectiously fighting for this vision by giving your team the credit over and over and over again when things go well. I've found immense success in doing that. I think that in trying to be self-fulfilled, you get back personally so much more of what you reward to other people. Part of that, I think, is advocating for other people and yourself. Don't let yourself get stomped on by others, but at the same time, that does not mean go and stomp other people down. I think that when difficult conversations come up, the best thing you can do is to try to engage even more in those, and not even like to try to dispute other perspectives, but to just try to ask why and try to understand those perspectives that are different from yours. I think that selling people on ideas is so, so important, especially when you're trying to accomplish a vision. But I think that there's a line where, again, this comes back to our acronym, WAIT, why am I talking? that you just have to take a moment and step back. And sometimes it's about trying to figure out when you need to step back and when you need to disengage. But I would urge you not to disengage completely when difficult conversations and roadblocks, stuff like that, come up. And that you can tie it all together by saying, just like I said before, collaborate with people, including those you disagree with. A leader who is trying to do the most good for the most people has to be somewhat suggestible. You have to be willing to listen to other ideas, other perspectives. I found that when you're in a situation where there's so many differing perspectives, or maybe there's just two, usually the right answer is somewhere in the middle. And that does mean that it comes into conflict resolution where parties are going to have to concede. And sometimes they don't want to concede, but it's about trying to do the most good for the most people. So I think that if I were to challenge anybody who's aspiring to be a leader, that's what I would say.
Period. I love it. Thank you, Aidan. Thank you for sharing your leadership insight of what you've been studying over the past little bit and your 15 years of scouting experience. Is there anything final that you want to kind of, in one or two sentences, say to wrap everything up?
That's a hard question. That's probably the hardest question you've asked. What do I want to close with? I've said a lot. I feel like I've yapped a lot in this episode, but like, how do I close? How do I do I summarize? Do I not summarize? I don't know. I'm obligated to say to pursue the pearl of great price, find out what is most important to you, and do that thing with so much passion that you can't help but change the world for the better by doing it.
Awesome. There you go, Aidan. You did it. You summarized that and put a period on that perfectly. And I want to remind our listeners that there are people that study and make it their life mission to study leadership. And leadership is an awesome and very ornate thing. I would encourage anybody to put something in the comments, something that they've learned, something that they've picked up from others, so that you can share it with the greater venturing community. And with that, here's where we end episode 21. Thank you so much, Aidan, for coming on. I really appreciated having you. And for all our listeners, thank you all for coming. And be sure to lead your own adventure. Keep leading the way. And I'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.